Your question is glorious because it is very beneficial to all kinds of people. The answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing, and it is approved by all transcendentalists. Purport, even the very question is so nice that it is the best subject matter for hearing. Simply by such questioning and hearing, one can achieve the highest perfectional stage of life. Because Lord Krishna is the original Supreme Person, any question about Him is original and perfect. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that the highest perfection of life is to achieve the transcendental loving service of Krishna. Because questions and answers about Krishna elevate one to that transcendental position. The questions of Maharaj Parikshit about Krishna philosophy are greatly glorified. Maharaj Parikshit wanted to absorb his mind completely in Krishna, and such absorption can be effected simply by hearing about the uncommon activities of Krishna. For instance, in the Bhagavad Gita it is stated that simply by understanding the transcendental nature of Lord Krishna's appearance, disappearance and activities, one can immediately return home back to Godhead and never come back to this miserable condition of material existence. It is very auspicious, therefore, to hear always about Krishna. So Maharaj Parikshit requested Sukadeva Goswami to narrate the activities of Krishna so that he could engage his mind on Krishna. The activities of Krishna are non-different from Krishna himself. As long as one is engaged in hearing such transcendental activities of Krishna, he remains aloof from the conditional life of material existence. The topics of Lord Krishna are so auspicious that they purify the speaker, the hearer, and the inquirer. They are compared to the Ganges waters, which flow from the toe of Lord Krishna. Wherever the Ganges water go, they purify the land and the person who bathes in them. Similarly, Krishna Katha, the topics of Krishna, are so pure that wherever they are spoken, the place, the hearer, the inquirer, the speaker are all concerned become purified. Maybe I'll read the second text also. It kind of goes together. Shrotavya dinila jendra nirinam santi sahasrasa apasyatam matmatatvam griheshu grihamedinam. Those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind by the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society or emperor. Purport: in the revealed scriptures there are two nomenclatures for the householder's life. One is Grihastha and the other is Grihamedi. The Grihastha are those who live together with wife and children but live transcendentally for realizing the ultimate truth. The Grihamedis, however, are those who live only for the benefits of the family members, extended or centralized, and thus are envious of others. The word Medi indicates jealousy of others. The Grihamedis, being interested in family affairs only, are certainly envious of others. Therefore, one Grihamedi is not a good term. He's not on good terms with another Grihamedi. It's like cats and dogs. And in extended form, one community, society or nation is not on good terms with another counterpart of selfish interest. In the age of Kali, all the householders are jealous of one another because they are blind of the knowledge of the ultimate truth. They have many subject matters for hearing: political, scientific, social, economical, and so on. But due to a poor fund of knowledge, they set aside the question of the ultimate miseries of life, namely miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. Factually, the human life is meant for making an ultimate solution to birth, death, old age, and disease. But the Grihamedis, being illusioned by the material nature, forget everything about self-realization. The ultimate solution to the problem of life is to go back home, back to Godhead, and thus As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 8:16, the miseries of material existence, birth, death, old age, and disease are removed. The process for going back home, back to Godhead, is to hear about the Supreme Lord and His name, form, and attributes, pastimes, paraphernalia, and variegatedness. Foolish people do not know this. They want to hear something about the name, form, etc., but everything temporary, and they do not know how to utilize the propensity of hearing for the ultimate good. Misguided as they are, they also create some false literatures about the name, form, attributes, etc. of the ultimate truth. One should not therefore become a Grihamedi simply to exist for envying others. One should become a real householder in terms of scriptural injunction. I think it matches the other one, because in the first one, Sukadeva Goswami says that you got to hear about Krishna, and Prabhupada quotes in the verse that Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Jovechita Tataha, that if you understand Krishna truly, His transcendental activities and pastimes, then you go back to Godhead, and then there's no more birth, death, old age, and disease, which seems to be a real problem around here. I don't know if anyone noticed, because most people don't notice that. Most people think that when you tell them birth, death, old age, and disease is the real problem, they say, well, what's wrong with that? This is part of life. Did you ever hear that? It's just part of life. Why are you getting all upset about this? There's nothing wrong with that. You take birth, you die. What is the problem? The problem is that no one actually wants to do that. Everyone is forced to do that, and because they're forced, and because they feel foolish about being forced doing it, therefore they think, no, it's okay, it's just part of the game. So therefore, Sukadeva Goswami says clearly the only solution to that is to hear about the glories of the Supreme Lord. But then in the second text, it's very vividly indicated why is it that it's not possible to hear about Supreme Lord and there's no interest. And one of the reasons is because he says they're all Grihamedis, they're all envious of each other. So, you know the definition of the word envy? What does envy mean?
Not being able to tolerate someone else being better than you.
Yeah. The definition in the dictionary say basically being dissatisfied. Actually, Krishna mentions the definition in Bhagavad Gita. He says, na sochati, na kankshati. He says, one is dissatisfied. Actually, in a dictionary, in a Webster dictionary, it gives a it says a feeling of discontented and resentful aroused by someone else's possessions. Discontented and resentful. So Krishna says the same thing in Bhagavad Gita. He says sochati and kankshati. So sochati is when you whinge all the time, you know. Yeah, this is no good. Yeah. I know you don't, but I'm just saying. So it's like sochati comes from the prefix in Sanskrit is from Shudra. Shudra means suk. Suk means you always complain. That's why the Shudras. The Shudras, they're always complaining about things. And Brahmanas, they never complain. And then you've got, so it says here, it's being discontented and resentful. What does resentful mean? Now, resentful means you express a feeling of bitterness, and you have this feeling that you've been unfairly dealt with. Unfairly dealt with. So that refers to being envious. So you know, nowadays you hear a few things about how people are being unfairly treated. And they complain. You've heard of the certain movements that take place because of being unfairly treated. as a feeling of bitterness and resentful. But actually that's the very definition of being envious. So you think, oh, what, I'm being unfairly treated, I should stand up for my rights. So therefore you go and picket in front of the White House. We stand in front of the White House and do a picket to protest against the being treated unfairly. That goes on everywhere, isn't it? Even in the devotee community you have some movement about being treated unfairly. But according to this, the definition means that you're envious. If you look at the lives of Queen Kunti, you look at the lives of the Pandavas. So the Pandavas, the emperor of the world. Now they got turfed out unfairly. Did they complain? No. They said, okay, we'll go 14 years. They went out. And then when they tried to make an arrangement, but this is the emperor of the world, right? We're not talking about just some village chief. So when Duryodhana came and they said to Duryodhana, why don't you just give them 5 villages? Because they're Kshatriyas, so they have to run something. They have to manage something. That's their nature. They have to control. So just give them 1 village each. And Duryodhana said, I won't give them even the size of a pinhead. Nothing. But still, Pandava said, okay. And it's Krishna that went there and said, oh, you got to go to war, you got to fight them, because you got to get them out. Krishna was not envious, but he just wanted to establish the principles of religion. So Krishna is the one that pushed it. Otherwise the Pandavas not. The same, you look at Jiva Goswami also, when the big elephant rider, Dwija, came and so-called defeated his uncle philosophically. Jiva Goswami heard this and said, oh, this is not right. And he defeated the Pandit. And then he got heavily chastised by his uncle. Said, how dare you do this? You're a sannyasi, you should not act like that. Because they're free from envy. But here, he says, you're resentful, you feel like unfairly treated. It's interesting, because all of us, we got some kind of, oh, this is not fair, or feel bitter, because we've been down, feel bitter. But actually this is directly linked to envy. Now in the first text, Sukadeva Goswami talks about a particular technology, and that's the technology about hearing about Krishna. And he says that technology will free you from your 4 problems: birth, death, old age, and disease. So nowadays we have great technology, and sometimes we think, even as devotees, that going back, because there's always been some technology is something that's always exists. Sometimes we think, oh yeah, if we go back in technology, like we live like in 1920s, we're good. We're lined up with Krishna. But that's not what definition of technology means. Technology means, I won't tell you what it means now. Well, I will. Technology actually means when you are able to free yourself from those 4 things. That's real technology. Now, what technology do we have now? We have technology that we can turn on the tap water, turn on electricity, so we live better. But the real technology is actually, because that technology that we have now doesn't really solve the problem. If Krishna says that the problems are solving birth, death, old age, and disease, then you look it up. Every second there is 1.8 person dying, and every second there's 4.2 people taking birth. There's the technology. Doesn't stop. So therefore, Sukadeva Goswami is indicating there's another type of technology, and that technology is actually to hear and to understand that Krishna is. But in the second verse says you can't do that if you're a Grihamedi. That means if you're envious. That's not possible. So Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita that if you want to make your mind the best friend, the best thing to do is to control it. If you don't control your mind will be your worst enemy. So that in itself is technology. This is advanced technology, which Krishna mentions in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when he lists all these different, what we sometimes refer to as qualities, but actually they're a process of understanding, of acquiring knowledge. So, when you talk about simple living, it's not just growing your carrots and getting your own milk, which seems to be somehow so distant from the philosophy, but it seems to be like a trend. But the reality of simple living is to live in a way that one doesn't have any effort in existing, and therefore focusing his whole time in understanding the real technology, which is the ability to hear about Krishna, the ability to understand Krishna. Because as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Janme karma chame divyam evam joviti tatataha. If one manages to do that, immediately is freed from these four problems. So the problem nowadays is that when one goes into this particular aspect of technology, which is to make life externally better, there's a sense of acquisition. You want to get things, because the very idea of technology is to get more things, because you save time by getting a car, so you get more things. So the problem with that technology is that it leads you to an understanding that the more you acquire, then the better off you are. But the real technology is that to exist with whatever comes easily, very easily, but will you be contented with that? And according to Sukadeva Goswami's definition about envy, you won't be, because he said envy means to be discontented. So if you live according to your, whatever is provided according to your karma, to your previous activities, there it is already. Your whole plan of life, forget getting the Ferrari, forget the big house, forget getting this, or maybe not. Maybe it will come. But will you be content with whatever comes? So that's the subtle difference between this technology and that technology. Because if you develop the technology of understanding Krishna, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that your mind will be your best of friends. When you have a really good friend and you're really happy, you can be floating on a barrel in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It doesn't matter, because you're with your best friend, you're having a good time. Isn't it? As kids were like that. But if you're by yourself, you can be in the midst of whatever, it's hell. So Krishna says, if you manage to control the mind, then you become content. So as soon as you become content, you accept whatever is given to you due to previous karma. Because this whole machine in the material world, we foolishly think that we can twist it, we can, extract something else out of it. But actually Krishna says clearly it's a machine, yantra rudrani mayaya, that he puts in motion. So now guess what? If you get a machine, and if let's say you get a dishwasher, and you try to peel carrots with it, it's just not going. There's going to be some malfunction there somewhere. Even if you call the company and complain bitterly and say I've been unfairly treated because my carrots are not being peeled properly, because you put them in a dishwasher. The dishwasher is not meant to peel carrots. So the idea here is that we live in this material world, but we don't understand what the purpose is of this material world. We think the material world is here up for grabs. That's what the material world is about. Whatever I can get out of it, whatever I can extract out of it, that's what the material world is for. But if you read the instructions, when you buy the dishwasher, it says that you do not peel carrots with it. Maybe you won't say that, but it actually indicates what you should be doing it with it. Similarly, when we live in this material world, we definitely must read the instructions. And if there are instructions, that means someone has written the instructions, that means someone made this world. It's not possible that the dishwasher comes just like that on your doorstep and it just fell from somewhere. Or someone sprinkled some parts and it kind of gathered up into a dishwasher for you to peel your carrots. That's not going to happen. So therefore, similarly, everything around here is coming together because someone's put it together. So therefore, someone has some instructions about it. So if you read the instructions, then you will know how to use that machine. Because Krishna says it's a machine. So you can't change a machine. So therefore, you utilize the machine for what it's meant for. And this is what Sukadeva Goswami is pointing out here. That if you do that, you become content. And when you become content, you don't have any worries in the world. You can just pursue ultimate truth. So instead of that, he's mentioning here, you pursue other truth. You create other truth and you pursue those little truths. For example, how are we going to solve like racism? Or how are we going to solve the economic problem? Or how are we going to solve a disease problem? How are we going to solve those things? So you create those little truths, you become absorbed in those little truths instead of being content with whatever comes and focus on the ultimate truth. And then in the last part of the purport, Prabhupada says, interesting, he says, foolishly people do not know that you're supposed to focus on the higher truth. And they say they, misguided as they are, they also create some false literature about the name, form, attributes of the ultimate truth. And this is all these things about the way the cosmos came together, the way the universe came together. It's all created stuff from someone who's absorbed in simple, in very small truth. So it's a bit like, in the 1900s, there's so many people dying, painting and building bridges and things like that. And now they've got this whole little truth about OHNS, for example. They just create all these things that I used to go to the market and you could walk in and drive in, whatever. And then suddenly one guy gets run over by a forklift. And then after that, everybody has to wear this high-vis jacket. And if you don't wear the high-vis jacket, you get fined. So you got a whole group of people that are created just to deal with this little truth, because you can't argue with it. Because if you argue with it, say, well, you're not for the safety of people, you're not for the equality of people. Are you being unfair? And then later on, they developed a bit more, and they had everyone wear a beeper in the pocket. So when that's when I gave up the market. when the forklift reversed, this would go beep beep in case you're like, there's a forklift coming. Should I move out of the way? Beep beep. Oh yeah, I should move. So this is what people get to when they get absorbed in relative truth. But to be able to be absorbed in the ultimate truth, one has to be non-envious. But that non-envious is practice, the process of bhakti, to be able to be content, at least the beginning to be content with whatever comes. Then we can practice bhakti, because if we're still envious, we will never be able to glorify Krishna, because Krishna is just too big for us. And somehow or other, I got to keep I got to keep the profile. So it kind of irks people to bow down to Krishna. It irks to people to surrender their lives to Krishna. It really irks to people to give their money to Krishna, because Krishna is so big and I feel kind of small, so I got to kind of pump myself up, the frog in the well, to be able to at least exist. Otherwise I feel like I'm stripped of all my identity. And this is what happens when we're envious. We are discontented and we feel this feeling of bitterness that we've been treated unfairly. Have you ever heard of people say, why does God do this? Why does God do this to me? I was doing the right thing and suddenly my family died and this happened and that happened. People talk like that. Why? Because they feel envious of Krishna. So as long as one is envious of Krishna, he won't be able to glorify Krishna. That's not possible. And then the solution, the real technology is to glorify Krishna, to be able to get rid of those 4 problems. Therefore, read the instructions and apply the process which makes one non-envious. And Krishna says himself in the Bhagavad Gita, he talks to Arjuna and says, I'll teach you this. Why? Why will I teach it to you and not to Duryodhana? Because he says to Arjuna, he says, because you're not envious. So if you really want to understand Krishna, we should be not envious. Otherwise Krishna is too big and we're real small and we have a complex of inferiority, and then we'll get this thing about I'm being treated unfairly here. It's just not fair. Therefore Krishna, someone else can cook your offering. I'm not even come to see you. So this we got to be careful about that, because when we hear Prabhupada mention envy in the purport so many times, we have to understand what actually envy means. It's right there. So the process of bhakti is there to get us accustomed at the beginning almost by force. Don't be envious of Krishna. Get up every morning, go there, worship Krishna. This is the sadhana bhakti. Until one becomes free from envy by hearing about Krishna, by serving Krishna, and then after that you will be, actually Krishna, you're so great and I'm so small. And I don't have a feeling of being unfairly treated, or I don't have a feeling of bitterness. And therefore I can glorify Krishna because I recognize how great Krishna is. But this is how the process works, really. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for this class. Just wanted to continue slightly. So I understand the premise that you're giving us, presenting us, that we shouldn't be railing against things that have happened to us, or what authorities have done to us, or husbands have done to us, or wives have done to us, etc. But take it as, this is something that is happening to me, it's my karma, and I should just proceed in service. So I just want to take a slightly opposing position here, that in cases, say for example, domestic abuse, and I've heard actually real life cases where the guru has said to an abused wife, it's just your karma to suffer this way, just tolerate. Live for a little while, and then when it comes down, come back again, which anyone who knows anything about domestic abuse understands it comes in a cycle, so that's not good advice. And then you have situations where an authority may actually not really be qualified to be in a position of authority, and they may perform some injustice, execute some injustice on the person. So that's why we have our ISKCON resolve, so we can work through problems. Would you like to explain a little bit more about the differences and how we can apply them?
Yeah, I think we need to understand how it works, but it doesn't mean that the problem should not be solved. So we got to understand how it works, and how it works is that we should not develop a feeling of bitterness and being resentful. But nonetheless, the issue has to be solved. It's like when you drive the car, you have a flat tire, then what do? You just, just keep driving anyway. Now you actually got to come and fix it. But you don't get out of the car and start kicking the car, and you just gonna get a rock and smash it through the windscreen because the car has just got a flat tire. So there is the issue aspect in the material world of fixing the things, which is definitely there. But then we've really got to understand what Krishna means but we are unable to worship Him and glorify Him if we are envious, and envious belongs to this category of keeping a feeling of bitterness and resentfulness. So there's the two aspects. You fix it and you fix yourself as well.
It's a bit like throwing the baby out of the bathwater, you know that saying? Oh,
Yeah.
This is wrong, so everything.
That's right. That's right. And then what happens is that you carry that feeling of bitterness and resentfulness towards others as well. Because everybody's done you badly. It's everyone else's fault. But the reality, Krishna says, if you accept me as I am, Janme Karma Chame Divyam, if you understand that, all your problems will be solved. But no, instead of that, we go and make sure that the wheel of the car is painted black so it doesn't get a flat tire. Now, even if it's black, it's going to get a flat tire. So we get absorbed in those little small things, overly absorbed, rather than understand the principle that Krishna is talking about, which is this principle of envy, the Griha Medi thing, which stops us from solving the problems of life. I think Nishinga Kavacha had his hand up first. Yeah, Yorada? This is like going, it's like on the other side.
Just in relation to the point by Krishna Rupamati, I think that the previous canto is a very vivid demonstration of that. In that, when he's traveling the kingdom, he saw Kali abusing the power.
You mean Parikshit Maharaj?
Yes. When he saw that, then he was very decisive.
Right.
He was ready to cut Kali's throat. But then when supposedly justice was being done,
Right.
he's okay with it.
Yeah.
So the idea that someone can say to someone else, oh, sure, no, you
Yeah.
can follow it, that's wrong.
Yeah.
But if it's happening to me, okay, so
Yeah.
I won't follow it.
Well, when the bull asks, when Parikshit Maharaj asked the bull, what do you think is the cause of this? And then he didn't, and the bull didn't answer. But he gave an interesting comment. He said, there's three things that lead to this. One is sheer material nature. When you live in the material world, you are bound to get affected by something. You are bound to get some, splashback. And the second one is karma. Everyone's karma, collective karma. And the third one is the will of the Supreme Lord. So he said, this is those three. But then when he said, I don't know, he said, which one of those three is it? That's when the bull says, I don't know. So it could be any of the three, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3. But nonetheless, we have to understand the principle, how it works, where we got stuck in the material world in the first place. Roger.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
This thing is not on. I think it's on.
The question on the answer clarified.
I think it's not on. Okay. Speak into it closer, closer. It's clean. Click closer, closer.
Coronavirus.
Mahaprashadam.
So basically, that makes a lot of sense because it clarifies the fact that, okay, you acknowledge the problem, you deal with it, you solve it, but you don't hold the grudges, you don't obsess.
Right.
Because anyways, if you obsess with the problem, there is no solution. So, yeah.
And it means you're still envious. It's not the problem. If you analyze properly, it's not the problem itself that creates you the disturbance. The problem is that you harbor some bitterness and some resentfulness, and this is the problem. This is the real problem. So that you carry that forever and after, and that's the real issue. But then you ask, why do I carry this? I carry this because it's integral part of envy, and I'm envious, and that's why I do it.
But I have another question
Okay.
in relation to being untreated fairly, and you connect that directly to being envious. But in the Bhagavatam, many times you read like Guru Maharaj was treated unfairly by his stepmother. We do they always treat them unfairly by putting
Right.
and then when you read the qualities of the Shakyas, it says fairness in dealing with others.
Mm.
So I'm not sure that, the feeling of sometimes people treat others unfairly. Of course, if you go to the root cause and you believe in karma, there's always some root there. But at the same time, you can't just deny that sometimes do have unfair
Of course.
feelings and treatment.
Of course, there is always unfair treatment. This is what the bull says in the first canto. The first one is material nature. That's the problem. So material nature amongst people deal with people unfairly and abuse people. Definitely.
But I mean, it's not always connected to envy. Like, for example, the mother, stepmother, or...
But it is because it is if you're resentful. If you're in touch with the Supreme Lord and you think something happened to you that wasn't meant to happen, it was unfair, don't worry, Krishna will fix it. And Krishna does fix it. That's the difference. Otherwise, if you think there is no Supreme Lord, if you think there is no ultimate truth, then you'll think, I've been treated unfairly, I've got to go and picket in front of the White House to protest for that. Because there is no Supreme Lord, there is no Supreme Justice, there is just me and the problem. And this is what creates resentfulness, because you're dealing with someone who's bigger than you. And this is why it's linked to Krishna, because Krishna is also bigger than us. And we deal with him like that also. How is it fair that I die? You made me. How is it fair that I even come to this material world? You put me here. So this kind of resentful attitude carries on to the problem, to the issuer of the problem, but it carries on to Krishna as well. And this is why we have real difficulty worshipping Krishna. That's my very point. But it doesn't mean there's no unfairness. Do you think it's fair really for a spirit soul to come here, a pure spirit soul, totally absorbed in Krishna's pastime, to come to this material world and take birth after birth after birth and undergo everything they undergo? If you look at it from an objective point of view, it's not really fair. But if you understand what's going on, then you think, well, yeah, it's fair because, Krishna said you wanted this, so I'll give it to you. But if you don't understand that there is a Supreme Lord, then you'll be very resentful. And therefore in us, there is a part that accepts that there is a Supreme Lord, but the part who remains resentful is the atheistic part who is saying, no, and I'm not going to accept a bigger person than me. And that creates difficulties.
What I mean to say is that sometimes the person who treats the other unfairly, like for example the stepmother of Guru Maharaj, she was the one who was envious of, according to the Bhagavatam,
right.
She was the one who was envious of Guru Maharaj,
right.
not Guru Maharaj of the stepmother.
Right.
So that's the only thing that I perceive, that sometimes I can treat someone unfairly,
yeah.
but they're not envious of me, they're
sure.
envious of them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So, would you say that it's the victim mentality that's the place where one becomes envious, when they become the victim? When someone thinks, I'm the victim, this is happening to me, and this is not fair. So basically would you say that would be because like Guru Maharaj's stepmother, she was like, this is not fair, why are you king?
Right.
So she was a victim. At that point, she became a victim.
Yeah.
So then she was thinking of herself as being victimized. So from that place is where the envy is.
Because you don't understand that there is a Supreme Lord, and if the Supreme Lord will have a Supreme Justice, as I said, if you buy the dishwasher, you get the instructions with it. So if you come to this material world, there's instructions that come with it. So if you know that there's a Supreme Justice, what's the problem? But this takes high realizations. It's not something that is done for the common being.
Yeah. So but it's that victim mentality, isn't it? Like someone calls me at reception, why don't you let me come?
Yeah.
It's not fair.
Yeah.
You're not letting me come. And I'm like, well, because I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. So that person then becomes the victim of somebody else's activity or action.
Yeah, but nonetheless, you have a law, a daily law that goes on, which stops this unfairness. But it's the person himself who feels that he's been unfairly dealt with. That whether they just let it sit, they try to solve it, and if they can see they cannot solve it, then you have to move on from there. So then you create the victim. It's like when you talk about the laws of Manu, but in the olden days, people didn't have policemen at every corner and a camera to catch you and stuff like that. That's not the law of Manu. The law of Manu was just there to state what is right and what is wrong. But the reality is because people were absorbed in ultimate truth, they were behaving in a way that was content. They were contented. And being contented, they didn't need to be chastised at every corner for driving too fast, for eating too much, for doing that, this and that. They were contented because they were absorbed in searching, even impersonalists, even Buddhists, whatever, but they were absorbed in searching for a higher truth, which then made everything else very small time and secondary. They didn't bicker about this stuff. But nowadays it's topsy-turvy because there is no Supreme Lord, there is no, it's all by chance. So therefore we get busy in the little nitpicking stuff instead of absorbing ourselves, and we become very easily discontented, very easily. You know, you look at the road rage on the highway, you see how people just by you cut in front of me will go and punch you and smash your windscreen. It's very quick, very discontented. Now that discontentment indicates that people refuse the existence of the Supreme Lord, and by doing that they reject the supreme justice and overall justice. So I have to deal with it myself, so I'll smash your head. This is what they think. But it doesn't mean there's no law. The law is still there, and the law has to be applied. But how do you deal with it? Then the devotees, they think, well, Krishna will take care of him, and Krishna does take care of him.
That's another point that we do in the pastimes of Yuga Maharaj. Srichi did get him come up and she was burnt in the fire, in the forest fire, when she went searching for her son.
Oh, the brother, yeah. But you see, the interesting thing about Dhruva Maharaj is that he got so upset that he went and killed all the yakshas. Huh? No, but he got upset. That's what I'm saying. He was upset about something that was unfair to him. And he went out there and wiped out all the yakshas. Now Lord Brahma had to come down and say, calm down, you don't do that. That's not how you work. And he preached to him. And he said, you know, this is this and that. So then he backed off. Just point.
And another thing I wanted to talk about or ask your view on it. You know, when we, without mentioning any names, of course, I mean, I think if we must be, that when a devotee who is feeling disenfranchised or envious or frustrated, and they spend a lot of time making really unfair and actual false allegations against GBC members, management, and they send it around to a group of their, devotees. To me, that's slander, and I feel, on one hand, I feel great admiration for those devotees who have been criticised by their very forgiving and peaceful, responses to this person. But then on the other side, I feel very frustrated that these devotees have given their lives and serving Prabhupada with such dedication have been, I can only say, blasphemed. And yet this, it can go on and on and on in a very unfair way. It can go on social media, what have you. Could you speak a little bit to
Well, I always think about Yudhishthira Maharaj when he says that when someone comes to you and insults you and you say nothing, where there is an exchange there, and the exchange is that they take all your bad karma and you get all their good karmas. That's great. So people that if you get insulted, you don't say anything, you receive all the good karma from them and you give all the good karma. And it's interesting because I received this text message this morning from a devotee who was apologizing profusely for criticizing, like you just said, criticizing here and everywhere in ISKCON, criticizing the leaders for following the government rules on COVID. So that devotee told me, I'm really sorry because I did that and this and that. But then the devotee mentioned why they did it. And they said that the reason I did it is because I was totally ignorant of what's going on, of the actual workings, how it works. And because of my ignorance, I made statements that were harsh and unfair. But it's interesting how they realized that is because of their lack of understanding how the machine works, which is exactly what Krishna says. If you don't understand how my machine works, you got little chance to understand how I work. Because if you want to understand someone, you try to understand what they do, understand their activities. If someone acts, and smashes people on the head and drinks and takes drugs, and so you look at the activities, and this is the type of person that you're going to get. So if you understand how Krishna runs the material world, then you understand Krishna. That's what he says. He says, my janma karma, my activities. So therefore the point is that person apologized because they didn't understand how it worked. And then when so many people died of COVID, and I've got friends I'm talking to in America, they're suffering. They say, just to take a shower, it feels like someone is rubbing a sandpaper all over your skin, and I don't eat anything, is suffering. Even if you don't die, you suffer heavily. So then you have people who are totally in ignorance. They blissed out in Australia, which is the land of milk and honey, and there's no disease, and they're saying, what the hell, you guys are following the government rules on COVID? It's like, that's ignorance. Similarly, we are so ignorant about the way Krishna runs the material world that we have no idea of what he's like. So therefore we say, this is unfair, this material world. We die, we get sick, we get old. I worked all my life and my family took all my money and I'm left out there in the street. It's so unfair. You don't know how Krishna works. Krishna made all this. Understand his mentality, understand how this works, then you will understand Krishna. Janma, karma, chami divyam. If you understand my karma, my activities, you will understand who I am. But because we refuse to understand, because immediately we block it, we say, oh, this is unfair. Immediately as soon as you say that, that's it. There's no solution, there's no ultimate truth. You just wipe out the Supreme Lord. So this is the difficulty with this kind of mentality. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.